Hello, hello, it's Mr. Fusion, and I'm back to talk about Dragon Ball Daima again. I have to admit, the video I did last week did pretty darn well, so I am being lured back by the siren song of covering what's popular. Now, if you remember when we left off last week, I was absolutely gobsmacked at how poorly the first episode used its runtime. It was so slow, so self-indulgent, so fan-servicey, I could not believe that you would spend 10 minutes out of a first episode just showing clips from a previous series. That is a terrible first impression. And I really want to like this show. And I have been hoping all week to get to open this video by saying, now that's more like it. And so now I come to you saying, and that's more like it. A lot of this should have been in the first episode, though. And I don't know, if I can just stop and editorialize for a second. I mean, this whole video is me editorializing, so what am I talking about? It just... I can't help but laugh sometimes, because I'm thinking about how exactly a year ago, I was at New York Comic Con, standing in line for this big Dragon Ball announcement panel, and I was surrounded on all sides by people saying, oh, I hope the rumors aren't true. I hope this isn't some dumb series about Goku becoming a kid again. I hope it's Dragon Ball Super coming back. And I'm like the only person going, well, I think it sounds fun. I want to see that. And they're like, oh, you do? And then from the convention floor, I make a video confirming what I just saw, that it is indeed what we now know as Dragon Ball Daima, and I end up hemorrhaging subscribers for an entire week, only to give my honest opinion of the first episode a year later and have everybody say, oh, you're just being a hater, I can't believe, how dare you hate this, as if I haven't been excited about this for a year. And likewise, you know, if people have any sort of non-nuanced impression of me, it's that they think I hate action in all forms. But the second I do a review saying this is ridiculously slowly paced and nothing happens, I get hit with all these comments about, oh, you just want to jump right into the action. You just can't even take all this information. And it's like, oh my God, I can't win with you guys. But anyway, episode 2 is a much better episode. I'm really excited about it. Really excited to talk about it. But just know, if you don't know, that I'm a much more story-focused person. I'm not necessarily here to, go into crazy detail about every little bit of lore nugget that might happen. I don't really know how I'm going to structure these things if I continue doing them, but these are just my first impressions. This is a regular length episode, which is good because they don't have extra time to waste our time with a bunch of nonsense demo reel for a remake of the Boo arc. I'm done, I promise. I just had so many quips I thought of after I made the last video that I couldn't put into that, and just gotta get them out of my system. But it's a regular length episode. Here's where the story really starts rolling. All the characters have become kids again. They find out from Mr. Popo what has happened. Kaioshin wants to take Goku into the Daima Kai, the demon realm, the great demon realm. And so Bluma starts fixing up his old spaceship, the spaceship he used to come to our dimension in the first place. But at the end of the day, I mean literally the end of the day, a new character shows up to take them on the trip in his spaceship, although he objects to the term spaceship, and his name is Glorio. And I am very much ashamed to admit it, but every time I say his name, I instead want to say Glory Hole. Because I'm an idiot. So this is the first episode that sort of hits that standard production style. You know, the last one was really long, it didn't have an opening, it did have a song at the end, but this is the first time we get an opening sequence and a closing sequence. The closing song from last time is actually the opening theme of the show, Jaka Jan, and I really like it. The lyrics are very much evocative of, Makufushigi Adventure. The kind of, we're going on an adventure and we're gonna have excitement and all that kind of stuff, but musically though, it's very much more slower pace, easy listening, very kind of relaxed, almost melancholic feel to it. Very catchy. But, pretty much every other Dragon Ball opening theme has always been this sort of bombastic excitement, action, rah, kind of thing. And this feels just kind of chill. And again, almost sad, and I kind of like that. And both the opening and ending sequences, the animation is very much captures that adventure feeling as well. Especially like the ending sequence very much reminds me of the ending sequence for Hitari Janai, the first GT ending theme. And I know everybody's comparing the show to GT all the time, but it really does fit. It's just a lot of sort of vignettes of various characters in different locations, exotic locations, doing, relaxing or enjoying the atmosphere or spending time together. And it very much reminds me of that ending sequence. And, apropos of nothing, the opening sequence I noticed features a lot of floating islands, and that kind of reminds me of The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. I don't know. Just thought I'd mention that. The next thing I want to talk about is that now we're getting to see all the characters as kids, and I feel like a lot of these designs were spoiled in the trailers. I don't know, spoil it. We knew about them is what I'm trying to say. And they're all really cute. Like, if anything, I don't think I mentioned this in my last video, but this stuff looks gorgeous. It looks fantastic. Everybody was complaining about Super not really being up to par back then, but this just looks amazing in so many places. And the character designs are among the reason why. Everybody is just cute and round and cuddly, and it's fantastic. I will say, though, the biggest surprise for me in this episode, and this might not come as a surprise to you if you follow the English dub instead, is that aside from Goku and briefly Goten, basically the Nozawa Masako characters, everybody has been recast now that they're kids. And it's also funny to me, if you watch the end credits, their characters are credited differently. Everybody who has a new form is credited as character Mini, as in Son Goku Mini, Vegeta Mini, Buruma Mini. I don't know, I just thought that was a really fun touch. And from a production standpoint, it does make me wonder if the reason they padded out the first episode so badly is because they didn't want the casts to overlap. I'm not sure exactly why, except that it would make the end credits very, very long. But the way these cut off is that you have the veteran cast very briefly in the first episode, and then in this episode, it's all just the new cast. And I'm surprised by this because if you watch Dragon Ball in Japanese, this is not something they typically do. It's not completely unprecedented, but usually they prefer to maintain consistency across performances. That's the whole reason that Nozawa has played Goku and Gohan and Goten at all of their ages. And obviously she continues to do so here. But it's like, we've seen Vegeta as a kid in the past, and Horikawa has voiced him. Trunks, very famously, has played himself both as a child and an adult. Started as an adult, then played him later as a child, Kusao. And in a lot of these cases, not all of them, there are some that are very different, but in most of the cases, they're doing very close approximations to what these characters sounded like already. Honestly, I might not have noticed for a lot of them. Like, Bluma doesn't sound all that different, Vegeta doesn't sound all that different, and I'm kind of wondering why they even bothered with this. A few characters, Mr. Satan, for example, sounds totally different, but most of them I feel could have been done by the original performers, and I wonder if this was some kind of cost-cutting measure? Did they just not want to pay the returning cast? I honestly don't know. Maybe they just thought it was a better choice, but again, I would believe that more if Piccolo didn't just sound mostly like Piccolo. It's not as if Furukawa can't do a slightly higher voice. I mean, he used to play General Blue, which is a much more higher-pitched vocal range type character than Piccolo is. So I don't know. But yeah, everybody has been recast. It's kind of like the Bardock special where you just have Nozawa there to anchor this mostly guest cast. I didn't mention this last time because she's barely in this, but she's in this a lot more in this episode. But I really love Bluma's outfit. Like her sort of two-toned dress with the boots. It's really cute. I love it. It's great. But my biggest shock for character designs is little kid Popo. He's got horns. He's got 2 freaking horns coming out of his head. Should we have known this before now? This is new, right? This is something that nobody knew before now. I didn't miss the boat on this, did I? But like, given the fact they're kind of like striated, there is like a part of me that wants to think that maybe his horns grow into his turban when he gets older, that maybe that's not really a turban, but just his natural maturation is for the horns to like wrap around his head. I don't know, like that was a shock. It was adorable. He was adorable to see, but that was a shock. We do get some more lore. Piccolo talks about, the demon realm and how Namekians came from there, and Kaioshin talks about it too. There's not really too much we don't know, just that, well, they do confirm that not everybody who has pointy ears is from the demon realm, just most of them. They don't go out of their way to specify who is and who isn't. They don't, like, give a huge list, thankfully, because that would stop the story in its tracks. But they do say most of them do. And that a lot of beings in the demon realm left for various reasons, escaped, used ships. So I think the biggest thing is that apparently that's where Kaioshin comes from. Which I don't know if that seems to be at odds with some of the more recent guidebook stuff we've gotten, where like Kaioshin are, fruits from a special tree. But honestly, what surprises me the most about that is that this doesn't seem at all to be news to Piccolo. He's just like, oh yeah, that was before my time. I've never really been there before, but yeah, I heard stories about this. Yeah, we're definitely from that place. And that just seems a little, I don't know, it seems like it would have gone down a little easier if the show had just established that he did not know any of this stuff. But I do want to take a moment to clarify some of the terms used here. I don't know if I have too much insight on them, but I don't want to get too confused or let people get too confused. Granted, all of this stuff is kind of retroactive, and Dragon Ball has had a lot of different nomenclatures and various beings all kind of connected into this pool now that we kind of have to sort through now with this new, combined with this new information. The term they use for Demon Realm in this show is Daima Kai. Great Demon Planet, Area, Place, Realm, whatever. And the term they are using for people who are native to the Daima Kai is Majin, which you'll recognize as sort of the prefix before Boo's name, Majin Buu. And within the original Dragon Ball series, officially, Majin Buu is the only character that we meet who has that title affixed to him. I think it's Dragon Ball Online that posits the Majin as a race, where you can create a character as a Majin, and they're all sort of descendants in story of Majin Buu in the future. But now that term is being extrapolated to refer to anybody who is native to the demon realm. And I don't know because I have not seen it written, but there actually are 2 different ways to write Majin that we've seen in Dragon Ball, and I'm not sure which one this is. The one that we associate with Majin Buu is the gene that is person, so it means demonic or magical person. But Dragon Ball, or the expanded Dragon Ball universe, had used Majin several years earlier in the second movie, Majin-jo no Nemuri Hime, which we typically translate as the Sleeping Princess in Devil's Castle. In this case, Majin is actually written as magical or demonic god. And that's what the title typically translates into devil. So I'm actually not sure if we're using Majin Buu Majin or like Devil Majin. And that might make some difference here. Because also the other term I want to remind everybody of is Mazoku. That is Demon Clansman. That is what Piccolo always defined himself as. Aside from Daima, Great Demon King, which is a personal title for him specifically, but in the broader sense, he and his children were Mazoku, Demon Clansmen. That term has not been used in this series, as far as I've noticed. I could be wrong. Again, I'm having to listen for the Japanese while also kind of having to translate my way past the subtitles, which sadly, just like in Super, are using a lot of dub nomenclature now. So I'm kind of having to doubly listen or doubly pay attention and sort of filter out all of the stuff that might not be as accurate. And actually, no, I have one more term, and I've seen people talking about this a lot. I noticed it in the first episode, but I didn't bring it up because it's not the first time we've heard this distinction, but usually, traditionally, when people talk about Namekians, the term in Japanese is Namekuseijin. Nameku being the planet Namek, Sei being planet, and Jin being person. So it's literally Namek planet person, or person of planet Namek. So almost every time in the Frieza arc and beyond, when it is brought up what Piccolo is or what Dende is, they use that term Namekuseijin. Now again, what they're saying now in Daima, this is not the first time it's ever been used. There are some, I think, early episodes in the Frieza arc where I remember hearing this term. But here in Dragon Ball Daima, they are exclusively referring to them as Namek Jin. There is no planet part of that. And it seems pretty obvious at this point that they are making that distinction because if they are from the demon realm, they're not talking about them coming from a planet called Namek. That they clearly would not be called that. And in terms of translation, we've never really made that kind of distinction in the first place. I know Funimation's dub just says Namek all the time, whether it's referring to the planet or the characters from it. Most other sources, the subtitles, the manga, myself, go with Namekian, Namek for the planet, Namekian for the people. Because there really is no natural sounding way of bringing the planet part into a translation, and up until now, there never really seemed to be a reason or need to. Obviously, anytime anybody said Namek, they were referring to the planet. It's implied. Now, suddenly we have two separate terms. And again, they were using that term before, but I feel like that was before. I think that was like in the fake, like around the fake Namek episodes, or even before that, with like the children on the spaceship, where maybe the animated staff hadn't gotten a standardized term for it, but now clearly they're drawing a distinction, and there's really no good way to translate it. It's not important, I don't think, but all these things I just want you to keep in mind, because clearly all these terms are intertwining and intermingling with each other, and it's good to keep them straight and what they mean, so we can see how that carries forward for the rest of the series, so we can understand what's going on. There is a cute bit in that Goku retrieves his Nyoibo. They spend most of this episode at the temple in the Heavenly Realm, and to get back to a second to how gorgeous this episode is, there is a scene, the scene where Goku leaves, I think. There is this wonderful, gorgeous sunset where he's just sort of training while everybody else is sitting around. And it did kind of remind me, because I think this is only the second time we've ever seen a sunset in this location. There's that episode where Goku is training in Dragon Ball, where Mr. Popo creates this sort of doll, this Goku golem, that he has to spar against, and I think that's the only time we see, a sunset there, and it's so great to see one again. As you might know, one of my complaints about latter stage Dragon Ball is that there rarely seems to be a passage of time. You rarely see night, and sunset's something you really can't see in a black and white manga anyway, so they're definitely making use of the animation. So it is interesting that right after that they do sort of, I gotta run around and find the Nyoibo sequence, which feels like it's taken straight out of almost the exact same point in the series, where Goku is having to run around to find the Nyoibo to make it to the Heavenly Realm in the first place. There is a cute sequence where Goku first goes to see Carding about it. And this is the point where I was a little bit confused, because I'm not sure if he was affected by this wish or not. Like, he does look a little more roundish, but I'm not sure if that's just because of the art style, because the dialogue seems to suggest that he's not. Because Goku has this line about, oh, you're not surprised to see me as a kid? And Carding's like, oh yeah, no, I watch stuff. I look down on Earth every so often. So it seems like it's implying pretty heavily that he knows about this because he was watching it, not because he was affected by it. But why would he not be included? That seems like kind of a dig at him. He's not a friend. I mean, Mr. Popo got Che. I don't know. It's really weird, but it is cute. For me in particular, this almost seems like this line was written for me, where Goku points out the Nyoibo isn't connected to the palace anymore, and Carding laments, yeah, nobody seems to use that to get there anymore, and I'm like, yeah, I know, I complain about it all the time. Thank you for acknowledging it at least. Oh, yeah, but also, so he goes back to Kame House to retrieve it because it's being used as a as like a clothesline, which again seems to be a reference or just a coincidence to the filler, because in the manga it's not like this. In the manga, Goku goes to Kame House to find the Nyoibo, and they just stashed it for him. But in the animated series, they draw this out a bit longer because they still don't know. They're like, oh, we brought it back. I don't know where it is. And it turns out that Lunch had taken it and was using it as like a broom, I think, a broom handle. So this seems really similar to that. But while they're there, there's this brief image of Umigame, the sea turtle, and he doesn't look any different either. Geez, I guess he's not a friend of them either. I will say I love having the Nyoibo back. I do wish they'd given a little more of a justification for bringing it back, though. I mean, yes, they already know they're going to go on an adventure, but it's like Goku goes on adventures all the time. Why is he getting this now? And it seems like there is only a non-diegetic reason for that, which is, oh, Goku's a kid again. He used this when he was a kid, so let's give it back to him. And it seems like that sort of came from the design sheets as opposed to the narrative. Because there is an interesting thing here that kind of sets this apart from Dragon Ball GT, because the episode opens with Goku and Vegeta falling out of the sky. They'd been up there training. And so my initial thought was, oh, they don't know how to fly anymore because they're kids. And as you might remember from my Dragon Ball dissection videos, I've always felt like GT was very inconsistent with how they applied this idea of Goku no longer knows things he didn't know as a kid. Sometimes he would, sometimes he wouldn't. It was just kind of all over the place, but that's not what they were doing. They make it very clear that Goku and the others can still fly. It's just difficult for them because they're not used to the sizes of their bodies. Their weight distribution is off, the length of their limbs, all that kind of stuff. It's very different from what they're used to have it suddenly change like that. And I do think this might be a reference to, like, when Goku is training in the Heavenly Realm, he complains about how his legs don't reach far enough. And I feel like that, if I remember correctly, that was like part of the reason why Toriyama insisted on making Goku an adult in the first place, is that he didn't feel he could successfully draw Goku in action poses against these big adult-sized villains because he was just this short, dumpy little kid. But so it establishes that, and I kind of like that. Given the Nyoibo stuff, it does kind of make me wish that maybe they could have just gone with some kind of feeling of limitation. It might have been good to go the GT route if you're gonna bring Nyoibo back. Then just because that gives Goku an incentive to say, well, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this technique. I can't do this attack. But my trusty Nyoibo, I haven't used that in forever. I'm going to need that on this mission. That would just make it feel a little more logical. So yeah, that's the second episode of Dragon Ball Daima. It makes a much better second impression than it does a first impression. Again, I really wish they could have structured the first episode better, because this is the episode that really gets you pumped, that really lays things out, that really, sets things in motion. You could have just taken the few minutes of the villains that we get where they're actually doing something, and then mush it with a lot of this stuff, and there you go. There's your first episode. And then you end the first episode with them heading out into the ship, maybe. I don't know. It's just, I know I gotta stop harping on it, but it just blows my mind that they would waste a first episode like that. But at least here, we're doing some great stuff. And I hope that continues, because again, this is exactly the kind of Dragon Ball series it seems like, and it has seemed like it since it was announced last year, that this is the kind of Dragon Ball series especially made for me. So I really want to love this. So thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe. Please let me know what you think. Check out my Dragon Ball dissection series. I love it. It's my pride and joy. And I will see you next time.